You're listening to Checking In, a self-help book club hosted by Adam and Amber, where we read self-help books each week and sit down to talk about them.
Disclaimer: the opinions recorded on this podcast are our own and do not reflect the authors mentioned here.
Trigger warning for discussions on religious trauma and abuse.
Hey folks, welcome back. It's time for another episode of Checking In, a self-help book club with Adam and Amber. How are you doing today, Amber?
Feeling a little grouchy.
This is called Checking In. This is this thing that we do that the book club is named after.
Yeah.
Is actually our checking in. So, I'm feeling grouchy.
Me too.
I'm feeling extremely grouchy. I woke up with a lot of pain in my back from, I think, kidney stones. So that's going to be fun to shake off and charge ahead and get cracking. Today's book is The Ethical Slut
by Dossie Easton and Janet W. Hardy.
Which I came to find out fairly late in the book. They are lovers.
I just kind of assumed they were.
Friends/lovers.
Yeah.
This one was a really interesting one. And I mean that in both like the literal way and the Southern way. So we're going to try to get through this book without tap dancing on y'all's feelings. Because there's a whole lot of people that are going to be listening to this that'll be like, thank God. Like finally here is the guidebook on how to do all of this sexual exploration in an ethical, non-harmful way. And then a lot of the listeners are going to be like, kind of how I started feeling, especially toward the end, where I'm like peeking my head through the curtain of a room that I don't feel like I'm supposed to be looking into yet. Like I'm not old enough to be seeing what's happening here with the grown-ups at this party. So I do not have a bio for these ladies pulled up.
Yeah, they were kind of hard to find on the internet for me. I mean, that must be intentional because they've been kind of at this work for years and years and years.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just being lazy. I should do the homework for y'all.
I found that Janet had a Twitter. That was about it.
Had probably past tense,
right?
Because we're recording this on the Tuesday after the Twitter meltdown.
I thought it's just been melting.
The
down.
Twitter apocalypse brought on by.
It's just been a state of being for a few weeks now.
Well, it's been a dumpster fire for a long time, but I kind of feel like it fully imploded this past weekend.
I purposefully avoid the news now. So I will be kind of behind on certain current events. I usually just let Adam give me the bullet points.
So yeah, I tell her what the weather's going to be today.
Well, yeah, that's because you're a dad. So
I was a dad long before I had any children. Essentially, this book is, like I said before, like sexual exploration, figuring out that like maybe monogamy is not for you, maybe a traditional marriage is not for you.
Yeah.
And how do we explore things like, I'm just going to go ahead and jump way over to like one extreme, polyamory, where we have like a lot of partners. And that would probably polyamory and like orgies and stuff. Like, so how do we do those things in an ethical manner? And a lot of people are probably raising their eyebrow right now. But there's proper ways to do these things. And generally the most proper way to do these things is to do them in a way that doesn't hurt anyone emotionally or physically. And obviously you can't control the way other people feel, but you can take a look at your own emotions and, kind of plan for the best instead of plan for the worst. So part one was, who is an ethical slut? Do you have a loose definition for that?
Well, I have discovered we are both sluts.
Fuck.
And anyone listening to this podcast is actually a slut. You have to be a slut to be in our book club. So
embrace it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't mean it in a bad way.
Yeah,
And neither do these authors.
they talk about how they're wanting to reclaim the word slut, because women are often assigned these kind of gendered names if they are living a free sexual life in the way that men aren't. But they pretty much just say that being a slut is someone who enjoys sex and kind of lives for yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, basically everyone who is not a straight up prude, I guess,
Yeah.
is so if you don't want to be labeled a prude, then guess what? You got a new label. Slut.
I mean, and even if you want to be a prude, like I feel like just if that's what you want to do, not if that's what society or your peers or your, religion is telling you to do.
Yeah. So it's about reclaiming these things.
Yeah, my sex therapist, which I talked about a little bit in the last episode, is the one who recommended this book to me. And I was like, well, I'm starting this podcast. I'm sure she's like, when are you going to start on the books I assigned you, ho? Because as you can imagine, the books we've been reading has been topics in my therapy sessions lately. So, we've been kind of breaking down some of these books that she's very familiar with during my sessions.
So we need to figure out how to bring like personal examples into this without getting all up into your business.
Yeah. But so she's assigned me a couple of other books as well. This is the first one. It just seemed like the most fun. I don't know, because they hit you with like a cool buzzword, some taboo stuff. I just feel like up front personally, like I skipped a couple of prerequisites for this one.
And by that you mean like you felt like there were maybe a couple of like elementary school level books that maybe would have introduced some of these themes
I just
before
I am, happy that there are people out there that are like able to live like how they want to live and do things their own way. I just feel like I'm still grappling with not feeling like a terrible person and a dirty, sinful, awful being for being sexual. Like I'm still kind of grappling with those things. So kind of just like throwing it into like, okay, chapter 17, sex party etiquette, is a little like, whoo, I skipped a couple of stones there. Like I need to take it back a few notches, but I'm glad that other people can enjoy these things, on their own accord. And, one of the reasons that I started going to sex therapy was in part due to religious trauma, which is kind of a new term for me.
Tell us about religious trauma.
Yes.
Because I've been hearing that a lot lately.
Yeah. So, at least, in my story, I grew up in the 90s. Evangelicism, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Evangelism.
That's not, I don't think evangelism is right. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks.
But that was kind of popular. I grew up in a rural part of Alabama.
Rural.
Yeah, I definitely can't say that word correctly.
Well, it's because we grew up in Alabama.
But, so like I grew up with a hefty amount of purity culture, abstinence only, sex education, father-daughter love song on the country radio. So purity culture, religious trauma, these are things that are telling young women primarily, your virginity, which is not real, is something very sacred. And if you have sex, then you are, as I've heard, being compared to a used Band-Aid. I've heard people being compared to a chewed up piece of bubble gum. I've heard of people like the people who are leading these lessons, quote unquote, passing around like a piece of tape and letting people's fuzz like get all over them, like from their shirts.
Yeah.
And then like at the end, like, this is what you are if you're having sex. These types of things really, really were ingrained in me growing up, and it turned into, as an adult, being really ashamed of who I am and my sexuality and being just a person, you know, like being
Yeah.
a human means that you're, you know, mostly going to be sexual. You're going to have needs and urges, and you're going to have hormones and things going running throughout your body. And I thought that, you know, felt very alone and very wrong and very ashamed. So, and they talk about these things in the first few pages. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of going through a lot of those things, and as a 30-year-old woman, you know, trying to redefine what sexuality means for me, separated from a lot of the religious things I'd been taught. So,
Yeah, I my parents really took an objective look at what pop culture was doing when I was a little kid and made a decision. They were like, "Okay, so why is sex lumped in with violence
yeah.
so often in pop culture and movies and TV and stuff like that?" So they really tried to kind of normalize sexual stuff
Mhm.
for me from a very young age. And I still wound up experiencing like a whole lot of shame once I got to like college age. And, you know, maybe some of that was stuff that my girlfriend at the time was putting on me. But, you know, she definitely wanted me to feel bad a lot of the time. And my type of personality wants an excuse to feel bad. My depression's always just in the trunk of the car that I'm driving around in. I can always just hop out and grab it if anybody ever needs me to. So it's not like I need some huge excuse to feel shame about, you know, some sort of sexual urge or something that I did. So it's just interesting that I did not grow up with the Christian evangelical background that you did and a lot of my friends did, but I wound up with a lot of the same attitudes in the end. Now I've unlearned that, but one of the very first things in this book is saying like, "Hey man, whatever you were raised with, I need you to take a look at that and decide if that feels right,
Yeah.
you know, or does that feel wrong?" And by the way, like there's a whole isn't there like a whole chapter on why involving children in your shenanigans is like do not fuck
Yeah.
with that. Like, and
Yeah.
here's all these reasons. And I felt weird listening to it like somebody is explaining to me how to not be a pedophile, but it's basically like just don't fuck with kids, don't have kids around when you're doing this, don't involve kids sexually. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to traumatize children for the rest of their lives in ways that you can't possibly imagine, even if you think it's cool, even if you are, you know, totally fine with it at the time. Like, oh, you know, we're a different kind of family, and so but there's still like, nah, you know, but almost entirely keep it away from the kids. If you have like you know, multiple lovers or whatever, like these are essentially aunts and uncles, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But like these children do not need to know your business sexually, and they don't need to be part of it, certainly. So like, don't get the wrong idea. This isn't saying like, hey, there's no rules anymore, it's whatever you decide. But there is a certain amount of like taking back, like, hey, if you want to be objective about this, this is normal, this should be fine,
Hmm.
you know, I need you to get down with this and open up, essentially.
Yeah. And I mean, I there's actually a good bit of rules that they lay out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like in this new no rules society, let's start listing some rules.
Cuz I feel like at least in my kind of peer circles, I have a handful of friends who would describe themselves as polyamorous. I always kind of make fun of my parents a little bit because they'll talk about like swingers,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, that's definitely a, you know, your age type of
Do we
thing.
need to step back and like define polyamory for anybody that's like, wait, what?
Yeah, yeah, sure. You know, why not? I think polyamory is kind of in fashion at the moment. So, you know, a lot of people are kind of claiming that, as sometimes I just feel like it's being used as well. I don't really want to settle down at the moment. Like I'm just kind of like trying to be casual. Then I'm poly, you know.
Yeah.
But
And I was introduced to the term by somebody who said that I was in a polyamorous relationship. And I had to go look that up and find out what that was and
oh,
kind of
okay.
come back and go like, no, I could see how that's what this looks like. But
Yeah.
no, my wife told me to get a girlfriend and I'm replacing the wife with the girlfriend and we're going to get divorced. We're not polyamorous. You know, like I had been trying to get divorced for a while and this was the out that I needed. And I was trying to be as upfront about everything as I was brave enough to be, and that is the honest truth. And sometimes I was not brave enough to be as upfront about things as I could have been, because this person was kind of explosive, and I kind of feared that there would be retributions for the next 10 years or so, which there were. But yeah, so I only learned about this by wrinkling my nose in disgust, going like, that's not what I am. That's not who I am. And now I'm coming back to it like, oh, okay. So like these people aren't like just amoral,
Yeah.
gross, disgusting, whatever other negative words that people can throw at it unless they've been inside of the situation.
Well, you have monogamous shitty people and you have polyamorous shitty people.
We have so many monogamous shitty people.
I mean, there's just shitty folks, crazy making folks all over, which is actually one of the issues I kind of had with the book, just like all these like idealistic notions that we're just gonna have a group and we're all gonna have sex and we're all gonna kind of be together but not and be very loose and free. And I feel like
because I have the best intentions about that, nothing bad is going to happen.
Right. And I feel like they kind of negate that there's
well, guess what, motherfuckers?
I just know so many of my friends who are poly and there's just constant drama. Like there's always drama. Like just even if people do have the best intentions, like people's hangups and traumas are just always going to exist, you know, whether they're with one person or multiple people.
So here's where having listeners where this isn't their first episode kind of comes into play. We can use jargon from past books. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're interested in having an open relationship and then that open relationship starts happening. Boom, raw spots.
Yeah.
Like you thought you were going to be way into this and it turns out you wanted to dip a toe in. And that, maybe you're showing off a little bit. And then here come these raw spots.
Yeah.
So they spend a lot of time actually talking about jealousy. There's at least a chapter, if not a section with chapters in it on jealousy.
Yeah. And I liked the chapter on jealousy. Just because, that's, I say, you, Adam, know. That's kind of a hard one for me.
I am aware.
Yeah. But they kind of have some really cool advice, about jealousy. First of all, that it's not something you need to be ashamed of. There's nothing wrong with you. How I always would feel needy. Because sometimes jealousy made me feel needy. And,
ooh, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with jealousy. That's an emotion. It's a natural emotion. It's an emotion you're going to have, like if you're caring about somebody deeply. But
so what do you do with jealousy?
Right. It's kind of like, and they talk about just sitting there with it and acknowledging it and saying, I can live through this. This feeling is not going to kill me.
Essentially, she says that they say that jealousy tells you about yourself.
Yeah.
Which I think is super, super interesting. Because one of my exes weaponized jealousy to an extent that my therapist does not know what to do about it. Essentially, he would, and this is an extremely experienced dude, and we've been working together for like 6 years or something at this point, and he's like, I don't know, man. Like, this sounds rough. So, I've certainly got like some weird issues with jealousy, kind of like pushing at it like a loose tooth.
Mm.
But this book says, don't be afraid of that. Examine it. Like,
Yeah.
try to figure out exactly what the deal is here
Mm-hmm.
and go from there instead of just like blindly stumbling into a situation and going, and this is the dangerous part, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
Mm.
And you're fine until you explode.
Yeah.
So, part of this book is essentially like, we need you to not explode.
Yeah.
If you're feeling jealous and feeling like you're about to explode, you have to have one of those conversations with your partner slash main partner
Mm-hmm.
where you're saying, I feel, it has to be an I feel conversation,
Yeah.
not a you made me feel this way, but I feel, that when you go out with this other partner, like I'm worth less,
Mm-hmm.
or that I'm going to be abandoned,
Mm-hmm.
or that I'm not enough for you.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, these are things that, like if for example, you just go out and have lunch and with somebody and I stay home and make a sandwich, like, and we're talking like a completely platonic situation. And then I'm a weirdo and I'll start having these feelings like, well, how come she didn't want to go to lunch with me? And this goes back to, my first telling me when I could and couldn't go to concerts
Mm-hmm.
with her and her friends. Like, that's my favorite band. Why would you not let me go? And oh boy, that's a raw spot. I think
Mm-hmm.
I've even mentioned that one before. And then raw spot, jealousy, blow up.
Mm-hmm.
So this book is really encouraging you, like, hey, if you want to have some fun in this way, you're going to have to grow up.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take a look at your raw spots. You're going to have to take a look at what your problems are, because you're not going to be able to just dance through this.
And I guess I kind of naively thought, like, polyamory, okay, like, I know a lot of people who are doing that. I've always thought, like, well, if you're a jealous person, this is just not the lifestyle for you,
Yeah, and it turns out that people are not born not jealous.
Right.
You don't get that way because you decided to be.
I just thought either they have just like a great handle on their self-esteem and they just don't really get jealous, or they just kind of don't talk about it or don't acknowledge it. That's kind of my impression, which was wrong.
Yeah, and it definitely is not that they just don't talk about it.
Right.
For sure. There's actually a lot of talking about it that's being suggested in this book.
Yeah.
There was something that, so I didn't take notes on this book, and so I am just sitting here winging it. But I do remember listening to the book with you at one point. There's been a couple of times where we've been sitting together listening to it.
Yeah.
We listen to the books separately for the most part, almost always.
Yeah.
And kind of only will listen together out of like necessity, particularly for me, because I can't, I have an 8-year-old and I'm not going to be listening to this book around him. And we've already talked about the noise canceling headphones, that
right.
I'm literally the only person in the world that understands what noise canceling headphones are and what they do. So I'll look over and my kid's been talking to me for several minutes while I'm listening to Sluts. So I have to listen to it with Amber sometimes. And there was a part about flirting.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to pause it, which of course then caused my phone and my car to glitch up, and it takes 5 minutes to reconnect. But I didn't understand what she was talking about with the flirting. And at the time, I don't remember exactly what this was, so I hope you remember, but at the time I was like, I have been told that I don't know when someone's flirting with me and that I don't understand when I'm flirting. When I am showing interest in someone, it's because they're alive a lot of the time and we're right here next to each other. Like, I don't go up and talk to somebody just because I find them attractive. I will go up and talk to somebody because, like, well, you don't look like an asshole and I don't like people. So like, I'm going to talk to you for a while. And then some of the time I walk away from that conversation with them being like, but I thought you wanted my number, you know? So do you remember what that flirting bit was about?
Yeah. So, I have some feelings on this, but I feel like Miss Easton and Miss Hardy are talking about flirting in a sense that's kind of very European, I guess. Like, um, these women are, advocating for having sex with your friends, your neighbors, whoever, which is very freeing, and I feel like cool.
Now, we're not talking about bursting into these people's homes without any clothes on.
Yes, yes.
But if we can maybe like draw in the neighbor into a threesome next week.
Or just like casually, like, you're my friend and we're hot, so let's, have sex,
Yeah.
whatever, no strings attached. But so I feel like their concept of flirting is just like talking to people.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't consider that flirting, but I also kind of differ from your opinion as well, because like, if a man is talking to me, I assume he's flirting. Okay, so let me just put an asterisk next to that, because I don't just think that anybody talking to me is flirting with me. It's not that I'm that self-absorbed. I just am used to men either ignoring my presence.
Like you'll be invisible.
Like I'm invisible.
Yeah.
But if a man is like, hey, I like your shirt. How are you doing? What's up? And I'm like, great.
It's like every man that starts talking to
know.
you is working from the same script.
And it's just like, great. And, he might just be friendly, but I've just been like societally conditioned to know that, even as I'm getting older, I'm invisible to any man that's not trying to sleep with me. So, like, I'm getting like bumped into, people cutting in line in front of me. I'm not a very tall person. So, but if a guy is being just like very courteous or interested in anything about my life, I'm just like, great, this guy's trying to flirt with me.
So when I met you in Birmingham and I got your name
Yeah.
and made sure that I remembered it,
Yeah.
that was flirting.
Yeah. I think we both know that you were interested in me, maybe not at the time, but you were attracted to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots of people that I'm attracted to that I don't then go trying to put my thing in, I never even bring it up.
Yeah, I'm not attracted to that many people, I've figured out, but I don't think I'm a very good flirt just because I'm so awkward. And I just try to make a joke out of everything, which is probably not like the sexiest thing I could do.
And that's funny because I'm almost exclusively attracted to really funny women.
Yeah, duh.
All right. We got to take a little break because of Jolene apparently right outside of the studio chewing on the bone that I gave her so that she would be quiet. So let me see if I can rearrange her, and we'll be back in just a moment. While we're taking a break, I wanted to remind you folks about our sponsors. This week we're sponsored by Aeropostale. The only way to send airmail
And McAllister's.
Through the mall. McAllister's?
Yeah, that shitty sandwich place.
Oh. Because I was trying to like figure out the Home Alone angle on that.
No, I was just like thinking of like the shittiest sandwich place I could think of. I guess I skipped over Jimmy John's. That's worse.
We're doing whatever the opposite of buzz marketing is. Eventually, places will just give us money to stop slamming their shitty sandwiches.
Right, because I'm an expert roaster.
I did want to bring up that we have been talking to a bookstore here in sort of in our neighborhood, or at least the
Mhm.
closest one, Bookish here in Atlanta. They if they don't carry whatever self help book you're hearing about, I guarantee they've got it online and you can order it from them, and we'll have that address for you at the end of the show.
Yeah.
So we were talking about flirting.
Flirting. Yeah, I just basically said like I'm not a great flirter.
Yeah, and
Um,
apparently I am,
you
but I
are.
don't know it. So, which one of us is really more worthless?
I know, right?
Um, okay, so let's move on past flirting. Oh yeah, cruising.
Cruising, that was like the cringiest word. Okay, I'm just gonna be
Cruising for chicks.
for real. Like some of the words and the jargon that was used in this book were super, super just like aggravating. I didn't like using the word cruising. I didn't like using the word play to mean sex. Like, do you want to play with me? I just, oh, that made me want to throw up. And
And yet, if sex is playful, then that's probably a good thing because then you're
yeah.
not like, oh God, I've got to perform, or.
Yeah, I don't know. And just like lovers and lovers.
I don't know that there are words in English that are as unembarrassing as what we are hoping for. So I don't know if this is really a flaw with the authors
Yeah.
so much as a flaw with us. So because we suck, we give the book 1 star. Fuck you, everybody.
No.
I told you we was grumpy today.
I know. I just like could not get past like some of the jargon and the words that were being chosen. I don't know. I mean, and I'm sitting there listening to this book and I'm just like, I guess I'm a prude. I guess that's what I figured out.
This book did kind of remind me of an experience where, like, look, I'm a pretty crunchy granola, new agey liberal person. And I went to a music festival where a band that I was in was playing a few years ago. And this, I'm not even going to say the name of it because I'm not supposed to. This is like a super duper, like, don't tell anybody kind of thing. You have to be invited, and you have to be invited by somebody who's been there 3 times.
Mm.
You can't just go once and then bring a buddy the next time. This is
It's
like a very small group of people.
eyes wide shut.
It's a very eyes wide shut. Maybe not.
Which is my least favorite movie.
There were totally women walking around at this festival with their boobs out.
Well, that's Bonnaroo,
With-
Adam. You've
with-
been to Bonnaroo. Great.
Was it Bonnaroo? I'm not supposed to tell y'all about Bonnaroo, I guess is what I'm saying. No, this was way, way in the backwoods of Georgia. And I go and I'm tripping balls, like one of the hardest trips that I have ever had. And they're trying to put me to work in the kitchen. They are like, and I'm super uncomfortable with all of this. And they're all up in my business. And toward the end of it, as like end of the trip, as the mushrooms wore off, I was like, I am fucking Rush Limbaugh compared to these people. Like, I am out of my depth here in terms of like crunchy granola hippie shit. Like, I thought I was here on this spectrum, and it turns out I'm all the way over to the side that I thought that I had nothing in common with compared to these guys.
Yeah. Well,
So again, that's just a disclaimer that like I'm not the target audience for this book.
Yeah.
That's not to say that I didn't enjoy at least 3/4 of it
yeah.
and think that it's helpful for just about anybody to at least take a look at.
Sure. And it's not, there was a part of me that's like, some of this poly stuff is, before I read this book, I thought was a little immature. There was part of it that I thought were exhausting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just a little too old for this, but these ladies are in their 60s.
And they know what they're talking
and
about.
they're still doing it.
Yep.
And they're still like having a good time, which is great.
They're twice as experienced as me.
Right. So, yeah, I just I was like, well, I guess I'm not too old. I guess I had a few more
Right?
slutty years left to change, evolve, grow, what have you.
What have I? So all right, we talked about jealousy.
Yeah.
And that kind of dovetails into embracing conflict,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially creating a safe space to check in like we do and talk about like, well, here's the things about this that make me feel scared. What can we do about this?
Yeah.
And chapter 15 is making agreements. The very next
Right.
chapter is about making agreements where you don't step on each other's toes. You try to be aware of each other's
Mm-hmm.
little weirdsies and try not to hit each other's raw spots.
Yeah.
That being said, you're supposed to be working on yourself. You're supposed to be working on these raw spots. So, like, some of the stuff that, like, you might participate in might be a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And it might be the shock that pulls you out of, whatever that jealous state
they're
was.
talking
Like, hey, this
about
is fun.
pushing boundaries all the time.
And if you push boundaries all the time,
I talk about your own boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like kind of, living a little, being a little brave, challenging yourself.
Yeah. And that does not come at no cost.
Right.
There's going to be weird moments throughout that. You're going to find you're going to find a lot more raw spots if you're constantly pushing your boundaries, which is, from a therapeutic standpoint, much more interesting than being an object sitting here at rest in your comfy home, not ever changing anything.
Yeah.
You don't really learn as much about yourself. And you don't have to. You don't have to grow. But what if you would like to grow? What if you would like to experience or let me put it this way. What if you're sitting there feeling like this isn't right and I don't know what situation is?
Yeah.
Maybe I should go off and find the right situation. These authors actually talk about like the main narrator was talking about spending, I think, 5 years being, quote, single
Yeah.
and figuring out who she is when she's not a wife
Yeah.
or living with somebody
Yeah.
or just falling into a relationship that falls into being a marriage.
Right. Chapter 16 was one that I kind of had some issues with. Chapter 16, they talk about cheating.
Yeah.
They talk about cheating as in a route to non-monogamy. I have some issues with this.
It doesn't seem like so much a route is like an indication.
I don't even think that, honestly. I feel like they kind of gloss over it. I mean, they definitely emphasize that it is a big deal to be cheated on, for someone to lie to you. That is a huge deal. But
Yeah, it's a betrayal.
hot take, I think cheating is pretty abusive. I think if you are manipulating and lying and gaslighting someone continuously, that's mental abuse.
Yeah.
You're crazy making. You're telling them their reality is not real. And I don't really think that this agonizing occurrence and situation is the time to be like, well, we should open up our marriage,
Yeah. Everything's falling apart. Let's have a kid. Let's have an open marriage.
I just feel like, the victim is kind of lost in the situation. I feel like cheating is traumatic when you're the victim. And I feel like when you're in a traumatized state, you're not making decisions that are ones that you might typically make.
Yeah,
or
it
ones
seems
that are
like you might go along with the
logical.
flow.
Yeah, like okay, I guess.
Yeah, I guess this is happening now.
And I also just feel like, in my experiences, which are very limited, I will say, I just feel like non-monogamy in an ethical way requires a lot of trust. And when you're being trusting and open and honest with your partner, I just don't really think I could personally get there with someone who's betrayed me, someone who's lied to me. And
it's cutting one of the legs off the table before
Yeah.
you sit down at it for damn sure.
So, your trust is obliterated. So then you're just like, I guess we need to all start seeing other people. I don't know. Like, that's just not, I just don't really think that that is, I don't think that works. I don't think that that's a thing. I mean, I guess if you want to do it, more power to you. I just feel like you're kind of satiating a partner who has done something really shitty to you, honestly. And
One partner becomes bigger than the other in that
yeah.
relationship for
And
sure.
I also feel like cheaters are not non monogamous. I think that people who cheat are, they're thrilled by keeping a secret, they're thrilled by lying, and they're thrilled by controlling their partner, you know,
Mm,
triangulating, both using, you know, each partner, whether the outside person knows, you know, that the initial person has like a wife or somebody. I just feel like everybody's being triangulated. Everybody's being controlled by like a kind of manipulative person. And you know, people with narcissistic personality disorders are going to get off on that kind of narcissistic supply.
that's going to be their deal. That's going to be their jam.
And I even have a really close friend of mine who has, you know, she's non monogamous and she's had open relationships with someone, you know, that she really loved and cared about. And their relationship was open and she's a freaky, sexy lady. And he still cheated on her. Like, he still lied and snuck around. Like, it's not about having multiple partners for him or people like this,
Yeah.
it's about lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just seems like you can't swing a cat without finding a shitty person
I don't know.
or a person in a shitty state.
I just like, you know, because in couples therapy, it was kind of brought up, of course, because they're just looking for answers to your issues. And
Yeah.
one of my issues in my marriage was infidelity. Oh, was it infidelity? And, you know, I just was like, I don't think that this person's not going to cheat on me anymore. I
Yeah.
don't think they're going to stop lying to me.
That
Which,
person is going to be a chronic liar and a person who with multiple sexual partners, regardless of what they say their reality is going to be.
well, and just like, I just think that some people don't believe that there's a moral reason to tell the truth. Like, they just don't think it's wrong to just be a liar.
So I'm going to point back at the title of the Ethical Slut
Right.
of this one. This book is not for him, and it's not about him.
I know. I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like for non-monogamy to work, which, and it might not work forever, I just feel like both partners, I think, need to be really enthusiastic about it. It can't just be like one dude wants like a bunch of girlfriends and then like his main partner, quote unquote, is going to be kind of passive about it. I just think that both people kind of need to be enthusiastic about it,
Agreed.
instead of just like, well, this person keeps cheating on me, I guess we should just have other partners. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was my thoughts.
And that's a good one. I would be interested to see what the authors would say about that.
Yeah. I mean, they don't, of course, they don't think it's not a big deal. They're just like, well, you know,
But
this
no,
is an option.
I want the 10-minute answer
Yeah.
of the two authors talking about this. And like, well, that's a very brave and dumb question, Amber. Yeah. I said that right as she was taking a sip. But I for real, I would like to understand how do we humans figure that out?
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know. It's a tough question. That's why I'd like to hear the authors talk about it. So we're getting to the point in the book I didn't finish.
Oh, right.
So I've got like a chapter and a half left.
And I kept telling Adam, like, the last chapter is literally just sex party etiquette. Like, that's all they talk about is sex parties. Like, the lighting at sex parties, the snacks at sex parties.
Well, hang on. I'm also talking about the half chapter that I didn't get to, where they're talking about sex and pleasure.
Oh.
Now, in my own case, I had to have a therapist tell me that sex and love are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Which, for someone who is and probably always has been a slut, that was a super weird one for me to parse out.
Yeah.
You know, because up until early 30s, if we had casual sex, it meant that I was also casually madly in love with you. So what did they say about sex and pleasure, essentially? Do you remember this, or did this get erased by the orgies?
It might have just been overshadowed by the orgies and like just like my horror.
We're going to go back and it's going to turn out that this was a paragraph.
Yeah. No, it was not. It was like multiple. It was a whole chapter. Come on.
No. Sex and pleasure.
Oh. I mean, yeah.
Sex good. Moving on.
They talk about a lot that humans are not monogamous. And I know a lot of people say this. I know there's a lot of evidence to support this. I feel like personally, I'm usually kind of just into like my person.
Yeah.
So I personally am not having a whole lot of casual sex. I am pretty much wrapped up in my person at the time. I, want that connection with them.
It's like monogamy with an asterisk.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not like I'll feel the same way forever. But I think the authors or people who are really subscribing to this lifestyle are kind of actively seeking out other partners all the time. And I personally know people
As like a side job.
Yeah,
almost.
and I personally know people
This is
who
their
are
hobby.
like this.
Same.
I just don't really have the bandwidth to take on like extra partners.
It's a lot of people.
I just feel like I personally give a lot to my partner, to you. I give a lot to my friends. I give a lot to my job, my family, my pets, myself. I don't really have a lot of time to just be like really giving enough attention to somebody else.
Or several somebody else's.
Right. And I mean, and that doesn't mean that I don't find other people attractive or that I don't, flirt with other people. I think that since being with you, I always say this, you really encourage me to kind of be myself. And it feels like I have a lot of freedom, to not be so constricted and worried about my shame or if I'm doing something wrong.
Good. Okay, so I guess that brings us to public sex,
Oh, right.
group sex,
God.
and orgies. Now, I'm just going to imagine that what they said about public sex is you can be charged as a sex offender if you get caught having sex out in the world.
Yeah.
Which that makes sense, and it makes public sex that much more awesome. I'm sorry, not awesome, bad. It's look, there's a forbidden excitement to it.
Right.
Do you recall what the authors said about public sex? Because, like I said, I just assumed. So, what was their?
Well, they
deal?
consider like having an orgy public sex.
Okay,
Like a
so,
sex party.
right?
So
Anywhere where people can see you, even if it's inside of the comfort of your own home or friends. So they're not talking about like hopping on the tractor and getting it on while it's in
I'm
motion.
sure that comes up.
Yeah. I just noticed that my example is very Alabamian.
Well, it's not with their brother or cousin or.
Hey now.
But
I told y'all I've got some fucked up stories in my background. Episode 5, the one where Adam reveals he married his cousin. Yeah. All right, here we go. And I'll tell the full story some other time or elsewhere, but long story short, my dad was adopted and so was my girlfriend's mom. And so Dad traced his mom back with the help of a private investigator not long after I was born. Found out who it was, got the last name, and he attempted to contact her. It did not go well. She said, never contact me again. And then my girlfriend's mom, while we were married, when I was like 21, 22 or whatever, finally tracks down her mom. Same town, same last name, probably the same person. So at worst, we were first freaking cousins. And this is just one of the most ridiculous things. Like, my life is absolutely a joke. And this is just a prime example of it. That, like, if there's a stereotype about Alabamians marrying their cousins, I'm here to tell you that you wind up doing it whether you mean to or not. Luckily, we didn't have kids. And there's, I guess, a chance that we're not actually first cousins. We might be a little bit further away than that, but good Lord. Anyway, group sex. Do you recall what you said about group sex? Because like I said, I didn't read this part.
I mean, it was basically just kind of like etiquette. Kind of laying out.
What are some examples?
What to expect. Like I said a second ago, it was just like the lighting at sex parties, the snacks, the attire, the layouts of sex parties, and basically the etiquette is like, don't be weird. Don't be a weirdo.
What would be weird?
Just kind of like going up to some people and trying to maybe literally insert yourself.
Uh-huh.
That's weird.
Yeah. Or just getting real close and watching.
I think they said watching is okay. It's
what about narrating?
Maybe not narrating.
Narrating like a sportscaster might be bad.
Yeah. Maybe not that. Maybe keep it down. I think they said that like watching was fine. It's kind of implied that that's cool. Probably no touching unless confirmed.
It's almost like strip club rules.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just a little bit like, whoo, this is a lot for me. I'm still trying to grapple with like.
Hang on, you said slut.
I'm still trying to grapple with just being a sexual person, and then kind of exploring like my own limits and desires. And now we're just talking about sex parties. I don't feel like that's gonna be my scene anytime soon. In so many words.
And I'm just sitting here trying to picture it.
Adam's like, shit.
I'm sitting here canceling the group invite on
the Groupon.
Facebook. Right. The Groupon for group sex. What if Groupon got bought specifically by a group sex matchmaking company wizard thing?
And I also I know people who do things like that. I'm not like privy enough to, I guess, be invited. No, I haven't had like just a personal, we would love for you to come. Like, I don't know where to seek these things out. I guess I could,
right,
if I really wanted to.
We would love for you to come, or however you react.
Right.
Little show business joke right there for you.
I don't know. I guess I could if I really wanted to, but that's not really. I'm not turning.
We're gonna get a bunch of invites now.
I know. I'm not really turning anything down. Knocking on my door, any formal invitations to the sex parties. I don't know. Yeah.
It's like knock, knock, knock. Rick Moranis from down the hall.
And they definitely talk about people, if you want to go like alone or with your partner and just kind of scope it out. You don't have to do anything.
See how scary or not scary it is.
I mean, kind of scope it out, see what you're into, see what you're not into, and then if you want to do it again, maybe go a little further. If you don't want to do it again, then you're just not going to. So they kind of talk about stuff like that.
These people are all assholes just like you are, There's nothing special or magical about them
Yeah.
just because they're able to do this,
Yeah.
or the fact that they want to.
Right.
So there's really like nothing to be afraid of. You're not going to get raped if you
Yeah.
show up at one of these parties.
You're more likely to get raped at church, statistically.
Now we're going to get sued by the church.
All of them.
All banding together as one. So, any final thoughts on this book?
I do have some final thoughts. I just, I don't know. I don't know if this was the book for me.
They're not all going to be
Right.
the book for you, but some of them are going to be the books for our readers. So why the fuck would they want to read this? Which is what the readers are asking themselves if they've made it this far in the podcast. Why would I want to check this out?
I have to wonder, like, what a man or anybody, I guess, would think if they came over and saw, like, the Ethical Slut on a woman's shelf.
Now, I've seen the book plenty of times before on the shelves of women that I knew.
Yeah. I don't know. I appreciate that it's there. I'm always like, anybody who knows me, I'm always like, you know what? You do you.
Yeah.
I don't care. But
Generally my attitude as well.
but not really the book for me. A lot of cool ideas and a lot of cool insight, but
And it's fairly fearless. It's brave. It's sex positive.
Yes,
I
definitely.
like the reclaiming of the word slut
yeah.
as a not a negative word, maybe not even a positive word, just a fucking word.
Yeah.
Like it's not an accusation of anything except you like sex.
Yeah.
Like so if
You're a person.
if we're just redefining it as I like sex
Yeah.
and I would like to explore more situations where I could like other kinds of sex. This is a good book for you.
Yeah.
Now, like Amber said, there might be a couple of prerequisite books that might be a little bit lighter reading that maybe, I mean, I kind of felt like I had knocked on the wrong door and was being led in and having my clothes taken off. But I'm like, hang on, are there dudes? Like...
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm about to find myself in a situation that I find scary,
Right.
which is very telling about, about my brain.
Yeah. But, there are definitely some things that I will take away. I think one good thing is that Adam and I, discussed the book and discussed some of our connotations with some of these ideas, and you are scheduled to go to therapy with me in the next coming couple of weeks.
To go see your sexy therapist.
Yeah, it's going to be very sexy. We just talk about how sexy we are. And how hard it is being so sexy.
That sounds extremely sexy positive.
We are sexy positive. Maybe this is a good opportunity to clear up. I did have some people ask how I make Adam talk to me and how I make him read the books, and I guess how I make him go to therapy.
I don't know. How do you do it?
I don't know. I guess it's because I'm so sexy.
Look, my answer to the questions that you received were, I'm not a unicorn and I'm not special. And I started going to therapy because of unbearable pain.
Yeah.
And I continued going to therapy because it helped. And I liked going and speaking to my therapist as well as a couples counselor in unflinching, raw language. Like I'll admit things to my therapist or my doctor for that matter that are fairly incriminating, but I will tell them the truth because like, hey, look, the deal is I tell you the truth and you help to sort my feelings out into something that's a lot more manageable. And I'm super duper interested in that.
And they turn around like, read these books.
they're not always like, hey, read these books. You
No,
know,
I just play.
I think a lot of them are like, you're very well adjusted to be as fucked up as you are.
Yeah, I always get like a wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, golly, and you're here. And as far like, how does she get me to read these books? Look, I've been checking out self-help books, since college when it was how to write better lyrics. You know,
Yeah, there's lots of different kinds.
yeah, there's lots of different kinds, and it's not all like soul bearing or like, how to find out if you're secretly gay or whatever. But I'm not here on this planet for that long when you think about it. And I want to find out as much as I can about myself and how to be more effective and how to be happier. And my brother and I had a little not an argument but a disagreement about this. My dad was raised by a crazy person, and he did not seek help for that from a therapist until I was off at college. So when I say, my dad didn't believe in therapy, I'm referring to the fact that my dad watched my best friend die when I was like 5, and then my best friend die when I was 15, and nobody ever said anything about therapy. So that's what I mean when I say dad didn't, because he didn't go, and
Well,
I didn't go,
It's always like funny when your parents finally go, and I'm like,
Really?
really? Really?
Yeah. Just
Interesting.
the meme of the guy with the vest with his hands on his hips.
Or
Like,
like
come on.
no, I always say like that blinking white guy, like,
Yeah.
interesting.
Really. But it doesn't.
Oh, you love therapy? You love antidepressants?
Yeah.
They helped you.
Huh.
Cool. Glad you came to that.
And
I
the
love
point,
that journey for you.
the point is not to bitch about the fact that it's happening now of all times. But like sometimes it would have been, we can't go back and change anything, but
Right.
some things would have been a lot easier if we had been more functional and able to do these kinds of things a long time ago, which
Right.
boy, that's a recurring theme in my life for sure. Like, I wish I was a lot smarter when I had this, power at this point in my life. So, we're going to give you our socials. Amber.
Yes. Thank you so much for all the kind words. Oh my gosh, they make me feel so good. We are on Instagram and at checking.in.podcast. If you would like to email us, you can email us at checking.in.book.club. Wait, book.club at gmail.com, because checking in podcast was taken.
Oh gosh. So now there's lots of dots.
Well, it's okay, whatever. Just message me on Instagram.
And we've also got a URL to tell you about for Bookish Atlanta, which is bookishatl.com.
Yeah.
If you're interested in buying any of the books that we ever talk about or the books that we say that we might be talking about next week,
We have a list.
we have a list.
Yeah.
And Bookish is either going to have that in stock or they're going to be able to order that
Yeah.
for you. But here's why I'm recommending our local bookstore. Jeff Bezos doesn't need any more money. Let's just be totally real about that. Let's support your local bookstore. Let's get you back into your neighborhood bookstore. And if you don't have one that you're familiar with, please feel free to use ours.
Yeah.
But you're not a bad person for using yours. Just don't use Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. The link to the list of all the books that we cover and some that we are, considering for the future, is in our link tree that's on the Instagram.
Ooh, we've got a link tree.
Yeah. So definitely check that out if you're wanting to purchase any of the books we talk about, because there's some good ones.
What do you think we're doing next week?
So we have had like a lot of suggestions. The one that's been suggested by far is The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah. So
That was on the list before we
it
started
was on the
recording.
list, yeah, for sure. But anytime I talk to anybody, it's like the body keeps the score. Try that one, do that one, do that one. I have not read it.
Yeah, no. In fact, I'm looking forward to reading it
Yeah.
and tearing it apart for how awful it is.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to be
No.
open-minded and I'm going to learn whatever I can.
Yeah. I'm excited for that one. And it's been recommended to me several times. So it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's I guess week 5 of look out for Gay Hendrix to come kick my ass. And we'll see you for episode 6 next week. Thank you, folks.